There comes a moment that doesn't feel like a moment at all. It isn't dramatic. There's no thunderclap of clarity, just a stillness, a breath, a pause between all the trying. And in that pause, you begin to hear what you've been running from. Maybe you've been doing everything right, journaling, meditating, reading the books, chasing the version of yourself you think will finally feel worthy, but nothing's changing. Not really. Carl Jung once said, "We cannot change anything unless we accept it." And maybe that's the whole problem. You've mistaken movement for transformation. You've mistaken effort for awakening. You've mistaken self-help for self-acceptance. And in the process, you've bypassed the one thing your soul has been quietly aching for: stillness, the illusion of doing more. You've been taught your entire life that the answer lies in doing. Do more. Try harder. Fix yourself. But the unconscious doesn't respond to action. It responds to energy. And if your energy says, "I'm not enough, I'm behind, there's something wrong with me," then that is what life will mirror back, not to punish you, but to reveal you, to show you that no amount of manifestation rituals or morning routines can override the quiet war you've been fighting inside your own psyche. You say you want peace, but you are addicted to effort. You say you want freedom, but you only feel safe when you're in control. And Jung would ask you, who taught you that stillness meant failure? Who convinced you that if you stopped moving, everything would fall apart? Because maybe, just maybe, the reason things aren't falling into place is because you've been holding them too tightly. The unseen cost of control. Carl Jung warned us, what you resist not only persists, but grows in size. When you try to manifest from fear, when you chase healing like a goal to achieve, when you repeat mantras from a place of desperation, you're not raising your vibration, you're reinforcing your wound. You're still trying to do your way into being, to force your way into flow. But healing doesn't come when you finally get what you want. Healing comes when you no longer need what you want in order to feel whole. It's the moment you stop looking outside yourself and begin to ask the only question that truly matters. What am I trying to fix by doing more? And what if nothing actually needs to be fixed? The turning point. You're not stuck because you're lazy. You're not stuck because the universe is testing you. You're stuck because you haven't yet learned how to be still with yourself, without the distraction, without the chase, without the illusion that you're broken and need saving. Carl Jung wrote, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens." This is your moment to stop dreaming and start awakening, not by doing anything differently, but by finally allowing yourself to stop, to breathe, to sit in the silence you've spent your entire life avoiding. Because in that silence, you'll find the one voice that actually knows the way forward, your own. The myth of alignment. You've been told alignment is a feeling, a frequency, a magical state you enter when everything is finally in its right place. But what if alignment isn't a state at all? What if it's the absence of resistance? What if alignment is simply what happens when you stop interfering, when you stop narrating your life through the lens of not enough, when you stop chasing your dreams from a place of shame, when you stop trying to micromanage your healing like a performance review? This is where Jung's brilliance pierces through. He didn't give us blueprints for manifesting outcomes. He gave us maps to our inner worlds. He wasn't concerned with how to get more. He was obsessed with why we think we need more to finally feel safe. And that's the quiet revolution no one talks about. The moment you stop pursuing your future, as if it holds your salvation, and realize your salvation was never out there. The real block, your energy. Look at your life. Really look. Everywhere you're stuck. Everywhere you feel resistance. Every situation that keeps repeating. Ask yourself, what energy is this pattern reflecting back to me? Because that's the secret Jung revealed. Life isn't happening to you. It's happening through you. The unconscious speaks first, long before your words, long before your affirmations. And if your unconscious still whispers, "I'm not ready, I don't trust, I'm afraid to receive," then no matter what you say out loud, the energy doesn't lie. That's not failure. That's feedback. That's life showing you where you are still split between what you say you want and what you believe you deserve. The shadow and the mirror. Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, It will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Let that settle. Every desire, every obsession, every fixation you've carried for years. It might not be a calling. It might be a wound. The relationship you can't let go of? Is it love? Or is it the ache of abandonment? The career you've sacrificed everything for? Is it passion? Or is it your inner child, still begging to feel worthy? We spend so much of our lives chasing dreams that were never ours to begin with. They belonged to the version of us that was still bleeding. And yet, the world will tell you to chase harder, to grind, to hustle, to outperform your doubt. But Jung whispers something else entirely. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. That is the work, not running toward your goals, but turning around to face the part of you that thinks you're not enough without them. And if this content is making sense to you, then click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. The void between who you were and who you're becoming. There is a space in between versions of you, a sacred in between, where the old has died, but the new hasn't yet arrived. Carl Jung called it the creative void. It's the part of the journey no one warns you about, the part where your rituals stop working, where your affirmations feel hollow, where your progress evaporates into silence, and your ego panics, because silence to the ego feels like failure. It wants evidence. It wants signs. It wants movement. But your soul, it speaks a different language. It doesn't need evidence. It is the evidence. It whispers, don't move, just become. This is the space where your nervous system learns how to hold the frequency of the life you say you want. It's the space where you learn how to stop reaching and start receiving. But it's hard, isn't it? Because no one celebrates the void. There's no trophy for stillness, no applause for patience, no medal for waiting with grace. But this is the real initiation. This is where the new self is formed, not in effort, but in quiet. The danger of interrupting the becoming. Here's what most people do in the void. They panic, they chase, they force clarity out of chaos. But Jung taught us the unconscious is always in motion, even when it looks like nothing is happening, especially when it looks like nothing is happening. When you feel stuck, you're not regressing, you're reorganizing. The chaos is not evidence that you're failing. It's evidence that your old patterns are being stripped away, that your system is recalibrating to something your mind hasn't yet understood. You're learning how to feel worthy before anything arrives, how to be whole before you're validated, how to anchor peace before you're delivered your reward. That's what makes it so painful. It feels like death, because it is. The death of identity, the death of the version of you who thought love had to be earned, success had to be chased, peace had to be proven. Why this void feels so haunting? Let's be honest. You didn't ask for stillness. You wanted breakthrough. You wanted a sign, a message, a miracle. And instead, life gave you nothing. The texts stopped. The opportunities dried up. The momentum vanished. So you looked around and thought, is this working? Did I do something wrong? But silence doesn't mean you're off track. It means you've reached the part of the path that can't be walked with noise. This is where your ego unravels and your essence begins to take form. But only if you stay, if you don't run, if you don't distract yourself back into numbness. And that's where most people fold. They go back to chasing, back to scripting, back to trying to manifest something they're still too afraid to fully hold. But not you, not this time. You're ready to stay in the discomfort, to breathe inside the void, to trust the architecture of your own becoming. Because Jung knew chaos is not the end. It's the beginning of form. Letting go is not giving up. It's integration. Letting go has a branding problem. To the modern mind, it sounds like defeat, like giving up, like surrendering the dream. But Jung would tell you, letting go isn't giving up. It's integration. It's the moment you realize that chasing is just fear with a mission. That desire, if it comes from your shadow, will only lead you back to yourself, empty, exhausted, asking again, why didn't it work? Letting go doesn't mean you no longer care. It means you've stopped trying to control something that was never yours to control. It's the choice to breathe again, to soften your grip, to stop manipulating your energy in hopes that life will respond faster. Because here's what most people miss. You don't attract what you desire. You attract what you've made peace with. If you're begging for love because deep down, you still feel unworthy of it, life won't deliver it. Not because it's cruel, but because your system will find ways to reject it, to distort it, to sabotage it, to interpret it through the lens of your unworthiness. You'll think, they don't really love me. This job isn't safe. I can't trust this moment of peace. And the tragedy is, you'll be right, because your subconscious has already written the story. The true work isn't attracting, it's becoming. You don't need to become more magnetic. You need to become more whole. That's the alchemy Jung devoted his life to, not manifestation but individuation, the sacred process of becoming all that you already are. You want abundance? Make peace with the part of you that believes money only comes through suffering. You want love? Sit with the child inside who still thinks it must earn affection to be safe. You want peace? You must confront the addiction to chaos that makes stillness feel threatening, because the shadow isn't just your darkness, it's every part of you you've abandoned in the name of survival. And integration means going back, not to relive the pain, but to retrieve the pieces of your power you left behind in the rubble. You don't need to prove anything to be ready. You just need to stop abandoning yourself. Stillness is a signal. There is a frequency that few people reach, not because it's rare, but because it requires patience, presence, and pause. It's the frequency of stillness. It doesn't scream. It doesn't force. It doesn't chase. It hums. It sits quietly in the middle of a storm and knows without needing confirmation, I am safe. I am worthy. I am ready. And that's when life bends, not because you shouted loud enough, but because your wholeness became undeniable. Stillness is not passivity. It's power. And when you finally embody it, everything around you recalibrates. The person doesn't text back. You feel peace, not panic. The job doesn't come through. You trust the redirection. The plan falls apart. You watch with curiosity instead of collapse. Because now, you're not interpreting the delay as a denial. You're interpreting it as alignment. That's individuation. That's integration. That's the frequency of someone who is no longer waiting because they've already become. You are not manifesting. You are remembering. You thought you were manifesting a new life, building something from scratch, creating a future with every mantra, every vision board, every healing session. But Carl Jung knew better. You're not manifesting, you're remembering the self that existed before the world told you to be something else, before you dressed your wounds in productivity, before you labeled your shame as drive, before you began performing worthiness like a second language. The version of you that you're chasing already exists. It's buried under the noise, under the masks, under the layers of false identity you took on just to survive. Jung didn't tell us to imagine our ideal self. He told us to excavate it, to dig it out from the unconscious, to pull it from the dream and make it real. Not through ambition, but through awareness, not by stacking affirmations, but by peeling back illusion. The soul doesn't chase, it remembers. The soul doesn't hustle, it remembers. It doesn't seek validation, it recognizes its own resonance. And when you align with that, you stop negotiating with reality. You stop begging life to give you what you think you need, and instead let life bring you what your essence is ready to hold. Because the truth is, you don't need the universe to give you a sign. You are the sign, the synchronicity, the pattern breaking through. And the moment you stop chasing the future is the moment you start magnetizing the one that was already encoded in your being. You're not here to build a life from lack. You're here to awaken a life that already exists in your unconscious blueprint. The power of identity shift. You want to manifest something? Shift your identity, not by pretending, not by faking confidence, not by masking fear, but by becoming the version of you who no longer believes they need to earn their existence. That's not mindset, that's frequency. And frequency changes not when you say different words, but when you hold different energy. Carl Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, not who your parents told you to be, not who your trauma forced you to become. But the original self, whole, complete, integrated, that's not something you achieve. That's something you remember. And every time you sit in stillness, every time you stop running, every time you let go of proving and producing, you get closer to it. Why shadow work is manifestation work. We talk about manifestation like it's a checklist. Visualize, affirm, align, receive. But Jung didn't see it that way, because Jung knew something that most law of attraction teachings forget. You can't manifest your way out of a shadow you refuse to meet. You can't call in love while rejecting the parts of you that still feel unlovable. You can't receive abundance while secretly believing that wealth is unsafe, or that money makes you selfish, or that your success threatens your belonging. Shadow work isn't a side quest. It's the main path. It's not a delay in your manifestation. It is your manifestation, because every time you make peace with a part of yourself you once silenced, every time you hold compassion for the insecurity you tried to hide, every time you integrate the very emotion you used to run from, you raise your frequency, not artificially, not momentarily, but permanently, because you're no longer vibrating from fragmentation. You're vibrating from wholeness. Your life mirrors your shadow until you integrate it. Jung warned, everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. You may be wondering, why does life keep giving me what I don't want? Because part of you still believes that's what you deserve. The partner who's unavailable mirrors the part of you that believes you have to chase love to earn it. The job that drains you reflects the belief that success requires self-abandonment. The chaos you can't escape echoes the inner belief that stillness isn't safe. And so you manifest not from your vision board, but from your shadow script, not because you're flawed, but because your nervous system is still tuned to an old story. The shadow wants to be seen, not fixed. Shadow work doesn't mean becoming better. It means becoming more honest. It means asking, what part of me feels unworthy of the life I say I want? Where am I still outsourcing my worth to other people's approval? What am I secretly afraid would happen if I actually got what I wanted? Because here's the truth. If your shadow believes that love means loss, or that money means isolation, or that peace means boredom, you will repel those things without realizing it. You will block what you crave because you're still afraid to hold it. But when the shadow is finally seen, acknowledged, welcomed, it softens. It stops screaming. It stops sabotaging. It stops hijacking your manifestations, not because you exiled it, but because you finally let it come home. And when all parts of you are allowed to exist, you stop manifesting from hunger and start creating from wholeness. The ego screams. The soul whispers. There's a voice inside you that shouts in urgency. It wants answers now, signs now, progress now. That's your ego. It panics when you're still. It catastrophizes when things don't move. It refreshes, rewinds, rewatches, desperately trying to decode life before life is ready to reveal itself. It says things like, why hasn't it happened yet? What am I doing wrong? I need to figure this out now. But here's the truth. That voice isn't your intuition. It's your insecurity wearing a spiritual mask. And Carl Jung would tell you, you cannot hear the soul when the ego is screaming, because the soul doesn't beg. It doesn't rush. It doesn't frantically check timelines or demand miracles on command. The soul waits, not because it's passive, but because it remembers. The soul speaks in stillness. The soul doesn't speak in language. It speaks in knowing, in sensations, in chills, in deep, quiet clarity. And you only hear it when you slow down enough to notice, when you stop filling the silence with noise, when you stop treating discomfort like something to escape, when you finally let the question linger without forcing an answer. The soul whispers, you're not lost. You're being rerouted. You're not late. You're being prepared. You're not broken. You're being rearranged. But the ego hates mystery. It wants maps, not metaphors. Deadlines, not detours. It wants control, because control feels like safety. But Jung's work invites you to step into a deeper safety, the kind that comes from inner coherence, not certainty, but clarity, not outcome, but alignment, learning to distinguish the two. So, how do you know which voice you're following? Here's the simplest test. If it feels like pressure, it's ego. If it feels like peace, it's soul. If it makes you clench, rush, or spiral, you're operating from fear. If it softens your chest, slows your breath, and reminds you that you are already enough, you've returned to truth. The ego obsesses over what might go wrong. The soul trusts what is unfolding. The ego thinks in timelines. The soul speaks in timing. And the moment you start honoring that, you stop performing for the future and start partnering with the present. Don't chase the signal. Become it. You've been waiting for a sign, something external, a message, a number, a call, a breakthrough. But what if the breakthrough isn't something you wait for, but something you become? Carl Jung didn't teach us to chase the world for clarity. He invited us to become the clarity we seek. Your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart, he wrote. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens. Stop searching for the signal. Become the signal. Stop waiting for the next affirmation to override your inner dissonance. Be the embodiment of coherence. Stop trying to manifest peace from a place of inner war. Be the peace that invites your reality to respond. Because that's what alignment is. Not the moment everything around you falls into place, but the moment everything within you does. Magnetism begins with wholeness. You don't attract what you obsess over. You attract what you have integrated. You don't draw in your desires by scripting them harder. You draw them in when your nervous system no longer needs them to feel safe. That's why your manifestations feel like they stall. Not because you're being punished, but because you're being initiated into self-trust, into sovereignty, into the truth that the life you want is not a reward for effort, but a mirror of identity. And that identity isn't created through control. It's revealed through surrender. You don't have to become more. You have to remember who you already are. Beneath the proving, beneath the persona, beneath the layers of over-functioning and under-receiving, from effort to energy. What if your only job now is to soften, to breathe where you once panicked, to observe where you once chased, to trust where you once grasped? Because when you stop trying to make life happen, life begins to meet you, not because you did something differently, but because you became someone new, someone still, someone whole, someone who no longer needs to control the path, because they have become the path. You were never manifesting. You were always remembering. You weren't late. You weren't broken. You weren't blocked. You were remembering, piece by piece, layer by layer, pain by pain. You were remembering the truth that was buried beneath your survival, that your worth was never in question, that your timing was never off, that your path was never missing, only misunderstood. Carl Jung didn't give us steps to success. He gave us the mirror. And in that mirror, we don't see who we're becoming. We see who we always were. Not the persona, not the performance, but the self, the sacred, silent self that doesn't shout for attention or beg to be seen. It just waits, patiently, powerfully, for you to come home. So pause, not as a tactic, but as a testimony. You don't need to move. You don't need to figure it out. You don't need to fix anything. Just sit, breathe, and remember, you are not building your worth. You are uncovering it. You are not learning how to manifest. You are remembering how to receive. And you are not waiting for life to begin. It already has. If something deep inside you stirred while listening to this, don't scroll past it. This isn't just another video. It's a reflection, a transmission, a message that came not by accident, but by resonance. Carl Jung reminded us that we meet ourselves over and over again, often in the most unexpected places. Maybe this was one of those moments. A mirror. A pause. A quiet opening into who you've always been beneath the noise. If your soul feels seen here, write it. I let go. I align. I remember. Not for attention, not for likes, but to speak directly to your own subconscious. Like this video, not for validation, but to embody the truth you just heard. Subscribe, Not because you need more content, but because you're ready for deeper clarity, deeper healing, and deeper return. This isn't just a channel. It's a remembering space, a place where those who are done performing finally come home to themselves. And if you know someone who's still chasing everything except themselves, share this with them. Because as Jung said, those who look outside dream, those who look inside awaken. And maybe, just maybe, this is your awakening. In a culture that glorifies doing, stillness is rebellion. In a world addicted to chasing, remembering is power. So pause, breathe, and trust this. You were never missing anything. You were only ever meant to return.